üniversiteden galiba.
Evet,
Erzurum'dan. Bizim Ağrı'nın Ağrı hakkında ve tarihi hakkında bilgileri kapsayan bir kitabımız. Çok teşekkür ederim. Kitabımız size takdim etmekten şeref duyuyorum.
He returned in both April and May of that year, again scanning the site with radar. By adjusting the frequency of the signal and scanning the same location over and over, Ron was able to obtain data that would produce a three-dimensional image of the structure beneath the surface, allowing him to construct a model of the ship. On June 20th, 1987, Ron was guest of honor at the ceremony held on a hill just above the Ark. In attendance were officials from Ankara and the regional governmental agencies, high-ranking military officials, scientists from Ataturk University who had independently investigated the site, and numerous journalists. Plans were also revealed for a visitor center to be built overlooking the Ark, and it was dedicated as Noah's Ark National Park.
Ayrıca Nuh'un gemisi olayıyla ilgili yapılan çalışmaları 2 gün önce Ankara'da üzerinde duruldu. Bu 3 tekliften birisi de burada teklif sahibi Mr. Wyatt var. Bu konuda büyük emeği geçmiş. Ben Mr. Wyatt yanında diğer araştırmacılara huzurlarınızda teşekkür etmek istiyorum.
The governor then asked Ron to bring the radar to the Ark site and perform a scan for the officials and journalists. After doing several passes, Ron explained the printout to those in attendance and pointed out what he said he thought looked like an intact timber just 2 feet below the surface. The governor ordered a soldier to dig, and what emerged was this section of petrified timber. The event was shown on Turkish television throughout the country. The governor gave the timber to Ron to bring to the United States to be tested. Everything that the Turkish scientists had recovered to that point had been kept under wraps. The governor wanted this to be made known, and placing it in the radar case, it arrived in the States in perfect condition. Back home, Ron took the precious timber to Galbraith Labs. It was an incredible specimen, perfectly intact, and displaying evidence that it was hand-hewn and laminated. 3 separate layers of wood could be seen, but more exciting was the fact that the laminating glue substance could be seen to have oozed out on one end and was perfectly preserved in the petrified specimen. At Galbraith, they carefully chiseled off a sample. If this was truly petrified wood, it would contain organic carbon. If it were just a rock, it wouldn't. First, a test would be run for total carbon, both organic and inorganic. Then, a test would be run for inorganic carbon. By subtracting the amount of inorganic carbon from total carbon, the amount of organic carbon would be determined.
We're in the process of weighing the sample now before the analysis for the total carbon of this sample. The inorganic carbon will be included in this determination, all the carbon that's present. As we run the inorganic carbon, we'll be able to tell the difference if there's any organic present in the material. 0.71% total carbon in this.
0.71.
Yes. At the present time, we're weighing about 500 milligrams of sample for a carbonate determination. That would be the inorganic carbon in the sample.
Right. So we subtract that from the total carbon, and that tells us what percentage is raw carbon and what is the carbonate.
Well, it would tell you what percent of organic carbon that you would have there.
Left. Okay.
81 ppm's inorganic carbon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Of the 0.71% total carbon, 0.7019% of it was organic. And not only did it contain organic carbon, it contained 13% iron from the metal fittings. When this timber was petrified, the water washing away its molecules immediately washed in iron molecules from the metal objects it had already passed over, which filled the empty holes. Ron again arrived in Turkey with the SIR-3 radar on July 23, 1987. He again continued with his scans of the entire arc, setting the frequencies to reflect the structure at varying depths. He now had all the data he needed. The width of the arc was 138 feet at its widest point, which was wider than 50 Royal Egyptian cubits, which equals 87.5 feet. But the decks could be seen to be collapsed, and when they fell, this broke the deck joists which held the ribs in position. This caused the ribs to fall outward, giving the initial appearance that the ship was wider than the biblical measurement. But the internal structure, showing bulkheads, were the proper width. The radar showed a tremendous amount of damage to the ark, but some chambers could still be distinguished. Ron assumed symmetry when he built his model. If a section was in poor shape on the left side, but was in good shape on the right, he constructed both sides identically. On the southwest side, near the front, the radar showed a very large door, which opened to a ramp system which led to the different levels of the ship. The top and middle decks appeared to be completely open along their midsections, which possibly would have allowed light from above to penetrate through the entire ship. The top deck could not be reconstructed with much accuracy, due simply to the fact that it was collapsed almost completely. All that could be determined was where each level began and ended. The 4 keelson, 2 of which extended along each side of the ship, continued to extend out beyond the rear of the ship, a feature Ron has never seen before. When Dave had used his molecular frequency generator on the Ark in 1985, he had noted a large section of the hull which showed a void. When Ron and Orhan Bazar found the large section above the Ark, Ron believed this was the bottom portion of the hull that was embedded in the earth and which remained in the earth when the Ark was swept down the mountain. Now the radar showed this same void. Since 1977, Ron had seen numerous anchor stones. In 1977, he saw one above the present location of the Ark. He later found one approximately 1/2 mile below the Ark, while the largest number of them were located about 15 miles away in the village known as the Place of the Eight. Any determination of exactly how they were used on the ship would be conjecture, but it appears that they were dropped or cut loose when the Ark entered the area. In an attempt to discredit these stones, alternate theories have been proposed as to their origin. One of these theories proposes that they are Armenian cult stones that originally had cult symbols carved on them, and that the holes at the top were for candles or represented the pagan eye of the dragon. This theory proposes that when the Armenians converted to Christianity, they erased the original inscriptions and replaced them with crosses. But in 1989, Ron found 2 more anchor stones, only these were buried in the earth and were only now beginning to be exposed due to soil erosion, and they contained no crosses or inscriptions of any kind. If these were truly anchor stones, it makes sense that some would have been buried in the mud after the flood, and the Byzantines and Crusaders couldn't carve their crosses on them. But if the Armenians had made them, where were their cult inscriptions?
Ron, what's the significance of the placement of the crosses in these stones?
All right, Tom, this is an iconographic representation here of a man, the head of the household, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughters or daughters-in-law. And as you can see here, the 8 crosses, the ones to his left are the lady folks in the family. The ones to his right are the men folks in the family.
Do these fit the story of Noah?
They do.
Another interesting object sits alongside the road leading to the village of 8. It is a very large section of what appears to be petrified tree bark, and it too has 8 crosses carved on it. Ron has theorized that it may have been part of the covering of the ark that Noah threw off after the dove and olive branch scenario. Bark is well known for its watertight properties, and again, someone many years ago associated this object with 8. In 1988, work began on the Visitor Center, as well as construction on the highway which led to the turnoff up the mountainside to the Ark. But the world was not overwhelmed by the discovery of Noah's Ark. In fact, it received very little media attention in the States, and when it did, the traditional Ark hunters came out in force to deny its reality. Various theories had been developed since 1984, as to what the boat-shaped object really was. Some of these theories were that it was a syncline or a geological formation described as a clay upswelling and a lava flow, which John Baumgartner discussed in 1985.
It had been proposed that this was a natural formation resulting from a mud flow around some kind of volcanic plug. First of all, the rock formation here in the center of the ship is not volcanic, and has much smaller extent than the ship itself. It appears from these lines that you've been drawing that the ship has impaled itself upon it. There's no evidence for any kind of plug beneath this thing. There's erosion all the way around it, and there's no sign of such a firm formation that could produce this oval-shaped object.
So it's not a clay upswelling and a lava flow?
No.
Another theory was that it was a copy of the Ark built by Constantine. Another theory which failed simply because the metals found in the Ark were not in use at that time. Aluminum has only been alloyed since 1948 and titanium since 1936. Then there is the theory that it is an ancient fortress. However, it doesn't take a great deal of intelligence to recognize that no one in their right mind would have built a fortress in a mountain valley surrounded by hills. Their enemies would only have to stand upon the surrounding hills and shoot down upon them like sitting ducks. The strange metal objects Ron and Orhan found above the Ark site, which Colonel Irwin sent to Los Alamos, were very important. They proved to contain an extremely high content of manganese dioxide, titanium, and aluminum. This material was identical to some of the specimens Ron had found falling out from the lower end of the hull, and he therefore concluded that this material was used as ballast. Ballast is any heavy material placed and secured in the lower hull of a ship to give it stability.